Okay, Kurt, you've flown the Blade SR. Give us a quick, before we grade it, give us your quick take on the experience.
You know, I've owned a number of E-flite helicopters. I have the MSR, I have their coaxial, MCX, the CX, the CX2. Spent a lot of time on the sticks with E-flite's products. Flown the 400 as well. So you go through the different product range and you get used to what you expect. Now I also had the opportunity to fly the CP Pro. It was actually my first helicopter close to this side was a CP Pro, and it was a very difficult helicopter to fly. The CP Pro was. So I hate to keep bringing that up, but this has a similar head. The head structure is very similar to the CP Pro, and the CP Pro is also a direct drive tail helicopter, and it was very jumpy, very twitchy, very difficult to fly, and formed some really bad flying habits for me. So it took a while to kind of get out of the CP Pro, which, you know, in all fairness, it was a very inexpensive helicopter, and it got you in a collective pitch very affordably. So for me, though, I had a hard time flying it. Just didn't click with me very well years ago. The Blade SR came out, and I said, finally, they've reapproached that CP Pro level helicopter, and they've kind of given it an upgrade, a refresh with some new electronics and new control, more stability. So I went in with the Blade SR, admittedly with very high expectations. It's an attractive helicopter. It's a great price point, and it's just that much needed size. It's bigger than a 100. It's a great fill-in helicopter before you get into a 450 size or a 250. So I went in with high expectations, and it was difficult to handle. It was when I first pulled it out of the box, the blades were out of balance horribly. I had to bounce blades. It was shaking all over the place. Well, all right, that happens sometimes from the factory. It slips through. So put it on the bench. Took about 10 minutes. Pulled the blades off. Balanced the blades. You'll see actually electrical tape right here just to get some balancing so we can take it out and fly it. I had to pull the tape that they had on this rotor blade off and add this much electrical tape to be able to get the head to balance out. Once I got the head balanced out, I went ahead and popped it off the ground, lifted it up, and it shot forward and to the left. I centered the trims before I started flying, but it took off forward and took off left. If I didn't have the helicopter pilot experience that I did, it would have been immediately a crash. I would have overcorrected, and it would have gone the other way. I pulled it back, got it on center, adjusted the trims the best I could, and it started somewhat staying in a hover, but I started getting a bunch of tail wag. So my tail was going crazy on me. Felt like the gyro game was off. So I put it on the bench again, and I'd read through the instruction before I fired it up, and they said, you may have to adjust the gyro, you may have to adjust the proportional mix on the ESC. Now remember that proportional mix adjusts the main brushless motor and the tail brushed motor, the differential between those two. So as you increase that main rotor RPM, you get more torque, and it has to be able to increase power to that tail rotor. So it's a dual function. The gyro has to respond, and the ESC has to respond. After about a half an hour of fiddling around with it, fiddling around with the proportional mix and with the gyro gain, I was able to get the tail to calm down on it, and it would actually have a decent hover. It would stay stationary in a hover. I was still getting kind of an occasional twitch and wiggle on it, but not to where I was really concerned with it. Being a direct drive tail, you kind of expect that. Sometimes it's going to get a lot of control. So then, off to forward flight. At that point, we took it out and started flying it. General impressions, and you know what, at this point, let's go ahead and start off the review. We'll go piece by piece and really start trying to pinpoint where I felt the strengths were and where the weaknesses were on this model.
Okay. All right. First point is build as advertised. We gave it a 3.5 out of 5 because of the things you mentioned.
A lot of adjustments out of the box. It is advertised as a perfect next step for coaxial heli pilot. A coaxial heli pilot is not used to drift and a loss or lack of control like that. It would have been a crash. If I had only coaxial experience, this would have been a crash out of the box.
Okay.
So it wasn't built as advertised. It required a lot of adjustment, about a half an hour's worth of adjustment, and some skills that you don't know if you're coming from coaxials. So it took a hit.
Okay, the finish, we gave it a 5 out of 5. It's a nice,
beautiful.
Nice
they anodized aluminum everywhere. The blue is just attractive. E-flite makes a gorgeous product.
Sure.
They really do make a nice, attractive helicopter, and the SR is no exception.
Okay. Power, we gave 4.5 out of 5. It seemed aptly suited the motor did for
the
what
main
you're
motor.
doing.
The brushless main motor has tons of power. That's one huge improvement they made over the CP. And I don't mean to keep dragging it in the parallel with the CP because it's a very different helicopter, but it has a lot more power than what the CP line offered. It's brushless, which is nice, so you get the efficiency. The tail rotor motor has plenty of power. The fact that you have this much mass with a passive tail rotor control in one direction, because all it does is turn off the motor and let the main rotor torque spin it around, and then it fires up to counter torque in the opposite direction or steer it in the opposite direction. The little motor has plenty of power as well. In fact, it has a lot of power. So from a power standpoint, they definitely took care of it. It's the control is where it falls down. If you have control or power without control, you've got an issue. So.
Okay, ground handling 3.5 out of 5.
Ground handling again, it's not the most stable tail rotor that I've ever dealt with. It's a direct drive, and I even with all the adjustments, I can get it down to a nominal twitch, but it still feels a little bit loose on the tail. So ground handling, it walked around on me, and once I got it out of ground effect, it stabilized pretty well. It sagged all right. One of the nice things about wood blades and plastic heads is they flex a lot, so you get a natural conical shape to the main rotor diameter or main rotor image. So you get a little bit of a settling inside the main rotor. And you do on this one. The radio is also very docile with high expos. So the expos are very high, so it's any movements you make are fairly gradual. So
okay. Durability 4 out of 5.
Yeah, it's well built. It's solid. You got a great travel case as well. So all those things put together, the chance of breaking this model. Now again, you do an impact. It's wood blades. The wood blades are going to break easily. It has plastic head piece components. They're going to break. They're going to pop loose and break. So overall, though, the skids are nice and solid. The chassis is solid. The aluminum tail boom is solid as a rock. So a pretty tough little unit.
Okay. All right. Flight as advertised. The Blade SR did not score well in this category, and we've talked a little bit about it right now. We gave it a 2 out of 5. Now I want to ask you something. Would this helicopter benefit from? And you had mentioned it earlier out of the box. Would it benefit more, and you think the flight experience would be better if you moved to a computer radio? If you went ahead and bound this to like a DX7, do you think the mixing capabilities within the DX7 may change your experience in the flight?
I think it would change the flight experience when you go to the CP portion.
Okay.
If you want 3D aerobatics and you want faster response on the cyclic, you're going to have to move to a different radio system. One of the fall downs on this, from a radio standpoint, it's a benefit and a detriment as well, is the system has very high expos. When you feel the movement on the stick, it translates to very slow or minimal movements on the head. So you don't have a whole lot of crisp response to be able to do 3D. You can do lazy rolls, you can do lazy loops. It has the power. It's definitely not lacking in power, but the control itself is fairly docile. So from a collective pitch standpoint, yes, it would benefit. From a fixed pitch, standard forward flight standpoint, I think where you're really suffering are two things. One, it's combination. The two together, you have the gyro and then the proportional mixed speed control with the direct drive tail rotor. I think if this had a gear-driven tail, we would have a totally different review and set in front of us. It would be a different flight experience altogether. If they would have just made that a gear-driven tail, throw a torque tube down the shaft, probably would have added $100 to the design of the model, but what you would have is a nice flying, solid, stable, fun, collective pitch helicopter, because you've got great components. E-flite makes good stuff. Spectrum radio components are fantastic. You've got good stuff throughout the plane, or the aircraft, but you just fall down in the tail. Yeah. So a little bit of tweaking on the electronics, and then maybe a different design on the tail would have produced a different result. So no, I don't think so. I think 3D performance would improve the radio system, but
all right. Well, the flight is advertised. Obviously, I think out of all of these here is one of the more crucial areas that we grade on, and I think the reason, there's no think of the reason. The reason it did score so low is because flight as advertised. They're saying this is the ideal next step from coaxial. Okay, put aside the whole experienced pilot part of it, the whole 3D
all you've ever flown is coaxials.
All you've ever flown is coaxials, and you've mentioned this before. This is not the next step to coaxial.
No, this is a next step to a crash, an expensive crash. Say an expensive crash. You're going to stuff this model. I think I can speak only from my experience. If I look at how I transitioned, I went all the way to forward flight with 0 accidents. And there's very few helicopter pilots that have done that. I've actually gone to forward flight. It's not that I'm exceptional. I took a very methodical approach to it. Yeah. I used simulated time, and I chose my models wisely. I got the previous CP Pro that E-flite handled. I didn't like the handling. I took it up. I hovered it. It made me very nervous, and I quit flying it. I went to another model. I actually saw somebody raise a 450 size up in their showroom at the hobby shop and hover it within a 4-foot radius. Totally controlled, stable, solid as a rock, and I realized that's what I should be flying. So at the time when I was learning, There was no solution. Like we have some models out there now that fill that fixed pitch, single
Sure.
rotor fixed pitch, and even single rotor collective pitch, small size helicopters that are stable. There was no solution at the time. The best thing that was available was what the product that E-flite was offering. I moved beyond it because that particular model was very, very difficult for me to learn.
Yeah.
This is very reminiscent of that same exact experience. When I pulled up, it felt similar. It acted similar. I had that same uneasy feeling when I popped it up in the air and it shot off to the front and off to the left with all my trims set. And I looked at everything. It looked stable, looked solid. It wasn't a good experience. It wasn't a comfortable experience for me. So
Yeah.
I think this can increase your learning curve for helicopter piloting if you go from a coax directly to the MS or to the SR.
Okay.
And it is tough. You hate to give a bottle. It's a bunch of great components.
Yeah.
But I think the end result, the end experience, is where this takes the biggest hit.
Yeah.
It's not, for me. It wasn't fun to fly.
Okay.
So,
Well, we've got to be honest with
yeah,
these
we do,
reviews.
unfortunately.
So. All right, flight time. We gave it a 4 out of 5.
Yep, good flight time. The included battery was fine, and the brushless motor is really efficient. So good flight time.
Field size, we medium park. You're going to want a little room, obviously, to fly this in, a little more than you would for a nano size. But
Yeah, this is not a tiny little helicopter. It's got some girth to it, and you get those blades spinning up. They can injure you.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be too close to it, or people, or cars, or anything else. So yeah, small park or a medium-sized park would actually be perfect, I think, for.
Portability, we gave it a 5, as typical with E-flite products, Park Zone products, the whole Horizon Hobby line, really.
Oh yeah.
Their packaging is great, and
you flip the box open. You've got close loose cell foam in there that's perfectly form fitted for the helicopter. You pop the top off of it, set it in, close it, and you're ready to go.
Yeah,
so
and it's well
portability is
protected.
phenomenal.
It's
Yep.
great to transport it in.
With a carry handle too.
Yes. All right, the last one being skill level. We marked it as intermediate to advanced. I'd say that intermediate would be on a more of an advanced intermediate.
Yeah, you're
if
at the
that
end of the
makes
intermediate,
sense.
ready to
Yeah.
transition into advanced.
Like Kurt said, if you don't have some heli time or have the piloting skills required, chances are this is going to get away from you out of the box.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
And it's just a little more
I've
to
built-
bite off and chew
I've
than.
built a lot of 450s. I've built 500s. I've built 600s, and even off the bench, setting them up from scratch, from a million parts, assembling them, and setting them out on the pad, firing them up. They were more stable in an immediate hover with unknown trim settings or anything.
Sure.
This is supposedly factory tested, which I think sets the expectation. It kind of set the bar high with a lot of the marketing. This was not ready to fly when we got it, and it would have been an immediate crash. So
Yeah.
unless you're comfortable, not overcorrecting, but quickly correcting, if you've got some movement that's unexpected, you're going to thump the model. You're going to break it. So that's not a basic or beginner at all.
Yeah.
And coax is a beginner. It's an 8-year-old. It's a 6-year-old. Here, push the stick up and let it hover and learn your orientation.
Sure.
Going to this is a totally different story.
Yeah.
This is very quick, very fast reaction, collective pitch helicopter experience. So.
All right.
Well, if you want to take a look at the full review, it's on our website at tobefly.com. If you have any questions that remain, you can go click on the icon in the lower left corner of the screen that says Ask To, and send us a message, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Kurt Gornick.
I'm Rob Gornick, and thanks for watching.